For 3,000 years, the galaxy had perfected the art of civilized warfare. Not civilized in the sense that it was pleasant or polite, but civilized in that everyone had agreed on the rules, filed the proper paperwork, and generally treated interstellar conflict like a particularly aggressive game of chess where the pieces occasionally exploded. The Vrex Dominion, with their crystalline ships that looked like angry geometric nightmares, had mastered the art of intimidation through aesthetic alone. The Keltherin collective preferred vessels that resembled oversized tuning forks, which they insisted generated harmonic resonance fields that disrupted enemy targeting systems. The Zifrin Empire, always the show-offs, flew around in ships that were basically just enormous energy shields with engines strapped on, daring anyone to waste ammunition trying to penetrate them. War, as these species understood it, followed a protocol. You arrived in designated combat zones, you exchanged formal declarations of intent, you engaged shields, fired energy weapons at predetermined intervals, and when your shield integrity dropped below 40%, you surrendered with dignity. Sometimes entire battles ended without a single casualty because someone's shield generator had malfunctioned, and the honorable thing to do was accept their withdrawal from the field. It was all very organized, very predictable, very boring, if anyone had been honest enough to admit it. Then humanity showed up at the Galactic Assembly with credentials, a sponsorship from the Keltherin collective, who'd found them wandering around their territory, and an attitude that could best be described as aggressively friendly. The humans seemed thrilled about everything, thrilled about the technology sharing agreements, thrilled about the cultural exchange programs, absolutely delighted about the warfare conventions, which they read through with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for birthday presents. Ambassador Krethix of the Vrex Dominion had watched the human delegation sign the documents with what he could only describe as concerning glee. One of them, a short female with hair the color of dying stars, had actually giggled while reading the section on permissible weapon yields. Another had asked if ramming was considered unsportsmanlike or just frowned upon, which had prompted a lengthy debate among the assembly because nobody had ever bothered to write that particular rule down. It seemed obvious that you didn't ram your spaceship into other spaceships. That was just common sense. The human delegation had written themselves a note. 6 months after humanity's admission to galactic society, the territorial dispute began. The Vrex had claimed a mining asteroid in the Tertius Belt, which happened to be 3 light years from a human colony. When human mining vessels started operating in the same region, the Vrex did what they always did. They filed a formal complaint, waited the mandatory 30 cycles for diplomatic resolution, and when none came, assembled a battle group. It was all very standard. A dozen Vrex cruisers, their crystalline hulls glittering with barely contained violence, dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the human colony of New Perth. They broadcast their intentions on all frequencies, surrender the territorial claim or face military consequences. The human response came back within minutes, which was far faster than the usual diplomatic back and forth. The message was audio only and featured what the Vrex translator software interpreted as multiple voices speaking over each other, possibly arguing about whose turn it was to use the communication system. The final message, once the humans had apparently sorted out their technical difficulties, was brief. "Yeah, nah, we're good here, mate. But hey, you want to fight? Beauty, give us 48 hours to get sorted, and we'll meet you in the neutral zone. Bring snacks." Fleet Commander Vixteril had replayed that message 17 times, trying to determine if it was a sophisticated psychological tactic or if humans were genuinely this cavalier about armed conflict. The reference to snacks was particularly confusing. Was it code? A human battle cry? Some sort of ritual offering? The Vrex fleet waited in the designated neutral zone, their ships arranged in the traditional combat formation that had won them dominance over a dozen star systems. Their shields hummed with power. Their weapons were charged and ready. Their crew was prepared for a swift, efficient battle that would end with human surrender and Vrex mining rights firmly established. What arrived 47 hours later, fashionably late by human standards, was something that made every sensor officer question their equipment, their training, and their life choices. The ship that dropped out of faster-than-light travel didn't shimmer into existence with the usual elegant transition. It appeared with what could only be described as a metallic belch, accompanied by a gravitational ripple that set off proximity alarms across the Vrex fleet. The vessel was massive, easily twice the size of the Vrex flagship, and it looked like someone had welded a space station to an asteroid, added guns, then decided that wasn't enough guns and added more. There were no elegant curves, no crystalline beauty, no carefully calculated aesthetic meant to inspire awe and terror. This ship looked like it had been assembled by someone who thought more was a perfectly valid engineering philosophy and overkill was just a suggestion. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals, some clearly armor plating, others that might have been repurposed cargo containers. Weapon emplacements jutted out at seemingly random intervals, as if the designers had simply bolted on cannons wherever there was room. The whole thing was studded with what appeared to be external fuel tanks, ammunition feeds, and things that might have been shield generators or possibly just large metal boxes welded on for no particular reason. Painted across its bow, in letters 300 meters high, was its name, Audacity, and it was playing music. Loud music. Music that was being broadcast on every frequency simultaneously, violating at least 6 different communications protocols and possibly causing hearing damage to the Vrex crew members who had their receivers turned up too high. Fleet Commander Vrex stared at the tactical display, trying to process what he was seeing. The human ship wasn't bothering with combat formation. It was just sitting there, rotating slowly, as if showing off every angle of its absolutely deranged construction. The music, which his translator informed him was something called thunderstruck, continued at volumes that should have been illegal. The human transmission came through, and this time it was video. The human male on screen was wearing what appeared to be a formal military uniform that someone had decorated with hand-drawn flames and the words Disco Inferno on the back. He was grinning in a way that suggested either supreme confidence or complete insanity, and given what Vrex was looking at, both seemed equally likely. "G'day, Vrex Fleet. Name's Captain Mitchell Hayes, commanding the Terran Defense Force vessel Audacity, and we're here to discuss your recent aggressive posturing near our mining operations." The captain paused, glancing off-screen at something. "Actually, scratch that. We're here to firmly suggest you bugger off before this gets embarrassing for everyone involved. Mostly you." Vrex activated his own transmission, drawing himself up to his full height. "Captain Hayes, your vessel appears to be in violation of approximately 40 different construction codes and safety regulations. Your shields are not active. Your weapons are in prohibited configurations. We count at least 17 separate violations of the warfare conventions you signed merely months ago." The human's grin widened. "Yeah, about those conventions. Real interesting read. Lots of rules about what you can't do. But here's the thing, mate. We're not here to follow rules. We're here to make a point." "And what point would that be?" "That you really don't want to start something with humans." Vrex felt his confidence returning. The human vessel was impressive in size, certainly, but it had no shields. No shields meant no defense against energy weapons. This would be over quickly. "Begin attack pattern Theta 7, he commanded his fleet. Target their weapon systems and propulsion. Make this quick. The Vrex ships moved with practiced precision, their energy weapons charging with that distinctive crystalline whine that had preceded 1,000 victories. They fired in sequence, concentrated beams of coherent light that could punch through standard military armor like it wasn't there. The beams hit the Audacity's hull and did absolutely nothing. Not nothing in the sense that they were deflected by shields. Nothing in the sense that the hull absorbed the impacts, glowed slightly, and several sections actually seemed to get brighter, as if the ship was somehow feeding on the energy being thrown at it. Captain Hayes reappeared on screen, now wearing sunglasses, despite being inside a spaceship. "Oh right, should probably mention, we didn't spend our budget on shields. Turns out, if you make your armor thick enough and install what we call spiked plating, you know, the kind that's specifically designed to absorb energy weapons, because we knew you lot loved those things, you don't really need shields." "That's impossible," Vixterel said. But even as he spoke, his tactical officer was confirming the readings. The human ship's hull was designed like nothing they'd ever encountered. Multiple layers of different materials, each one calculated to absorb, disperse, or redirect different types of energy. It was crude, it was inelegant, it was absolutely infuriating in how effective it was. "Target their engines," Vixterel ordered. "Maximum power." The entire Vrex fleet opened fire, concentrating their beams on the Audacity's propulsion systems. Surely that would be vulnerable. Every ship needed engines, and engines were always the weak point. The Audacity's response was to accelerate directly toward the Vrex fleet. Not in a combat maneuver, not in a tactical repositioning, just straight-line acceleration, building speed, the kind of speed that suggested the humans had installed engines that were probably illegal in at least 3 different ways. "Sir, they're on a collision course," the tactical officer reported, his voice climbing an octave. "They wouldn't, no one would sacrifice a vessel of that size for." Captain Hayes' voice came over the channel, and he was laughing, actually laughing. "You know what the best thing about not having shields is? We saved so much weight. Which means we could install bigger engines, which means we can go really, really fast. Which means," he paused for effect, "ramming speed is always an option." The Vrex fleet scattered. Any pretense of formation or tactics evaporated as 12 warships broke in different directions, because nobody in the galaxy's recorded history had been insane enough to try ramming as an opening move. The Audacity thundered past the Vrex flagship close enough that Vixterel could see individual rivets on its hull, close enough that the gravitational wake sent his ship spinning. The human vessel wasn't done. It curved around, its maneuverability completely inappropriate for something that size, and began launching projectiles. Not energy weapons. Not guided missiles. Solid projectiles. Chunks of metal moving at relativistic speeds, completely undetectable by sensors designed to track energy signatures. One of the Vrex cruisers took a hit dead center. Its shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, did absolutely nothing against several tons of tungsten moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The ship folded like paper. "Cease fire! Cease fire!" Vixterel was shouting now, all composure gone. "Broadcast surrender. Full surrender." The Audacity stopped. Just stopped dead in space, its engines cutting off in a way that should have torn the ship apart from the deceleration forces, but apparently didn't, because human engineering was powered by spite and poor life choices. Captain Hayes reappeared on screen, no longer wearing sunglasses, looking almost disappointed. "Really? already. But we've got 16 more weapon systems we haven't even tested yet. We've got this thing called a rods from God launcher, and we've been dying to see if it actually works in space combat. We surrender completely and unconditionally, Vrex said, the words tasting like ash. We withdraw all claims to the Tertius belt. We will pay reparations. We will sign any treaty you require. Just please stop. The human captain sighed, looking genuinely let down. All right, fair dinkum. We'll accept your surrender. But mate, and I say this with respect, you lot really need to rethink your whole approach to warfare. All this shields and energy weapons nonsense. Where's the creativity? Where's the passion? Where's the absolute commitment to making the other guy regret his life choices? The transmission cut off. The Audacity sat there for another few minutes, possibly to make sure the point was made, then activated its faster-than-light drive and disappeared with the same gravitational belch it had arrived with. Vrex sat in his command chair, staring at the empty space where the human ship had been, trying to compose the report he would have to file with the Dominion leadership. How did you explain that you'd surrendered to a species that treated warfare like a particularly aggressive bar fight? How did you admit that your fleet, your proud and powerful fleet, had been terrorized by what amounted to a flying pile of guns held together with welds and human audacity? 6 months later, the galaxy had adjusted to its new reality. The warfare conventions had been amended 17 times, most of the new clauses beginning with the phrase, "in the event that humans are involved." There were now specific regulations about ramming speed, kinetic weapons, and something called aggressive use of acceleration that everyone agreed was necessary, even if no one wanted to admit why. Human vessels were now flagged in every military database with warning labels that would have been insulting if they weren't accurate. Unpredictable tactics likely. May ignore conventional combat doctrine. Approach with extreme caution and lowered expectations for civilized warfare. The Terran Defense Force had commissioned 6 more vessels in the Audacity class, each one with a name that made military commanders across the galaxy slightly nauseous: spite, malicious compliance, consequences, no regrets, calculated risk, and most recently, find out. The phrase "humans are involved" had become military shorthand for abandon all tactical planning, prepare for chaos, maybe just surrender preemptively and save everyone the trouble. And somewhere in the Tertius belt, human miners went about their business, protected by a fleet that treated warfare less like chess and more like a contact sport where the points were made up and the rules were just suggestions. They'd brought something to the galaxy that had been missing for 3,000 years, the understanding that sometimes the scariest thing in the universe wasn't the most advanced technology or the most powerful weapons. It was someone too stubborn to realize they should be afraid, armed with more guns than good sense, and a philosophy that boiled down to hold my beer and watch this. The galaxy had spent millennia perfecting civilized warfare. Humanity had shown up and reminded everyone what war actually looked like when you stripped away the politeness and protocols. And the really terrifying part, the part that kept military strategists up at night across a dozen species and 100 worlds, was the growing suspicion that humans had been holding back, that the Audacity and her sister ships weren't humanity's best effort at military engineering. They were just what humans had thrown together to make a point. And if this was them being casual about it, nobody wanted to see what happened if humans actually got serious. The galaxy had learned to live with its new apex predators, the species that had somehow evolved past their primitive origins, while simultaneously never evolving past their fundamental approach to conflict. Hit it harder, hit it faster, and if that doesn't work, hit it with something heavier. Somewhere in human space, another vessel was being commissioned. The name had already been registered with the Galactic database, proportional response. The quotation marks around proportional were not reassuring anyone.